We are continuing solving absolute value inequalities. We're going to look at a real life example. All right, so before we look at the example, anytime it says words and math, this can help you kind of understand the problem. So go ahead and take time to look at this. So words and math. A deviation is something that is different from the expected norm. In mathematics, absolute deviation represents how far a number deviates from a specific value. Remember, this is one of the definitions for this section, and this just kind of explains it a little bit more. So absolute deviation represents how far a number deviates from a specific value. So let's see what they're asking us to do. A mountain climber wants to buy a new camera drone to help map out a safe route to a mountain's summit. A table shows the prices of several camera drones. The climber is willing to pay the mean, okay, remember the mean is your average, the mean price with an absolute deviation of at most, okay, at most, no more than $100. How many of the camera drone prices meet this condition? All right, so you can see that there are 10 numbers. There's 5 in this column and 5 in this column. The first thing we need to do is find the mean, okay? So take these 10 numbers, add them up, and divide by 10. So to find the mean, or to find the average, you add up the values and divide by how many values there are. So add these up, divide by 10, and that's a good place to start. Okay, I took a moment. I went ahead and entered these numbers in here. So if you add these 10 numbers up, you should have got 6,640. And again, we're trying to find the average of that. So we're going to take that number and divide it by 10. We're dividing by 10 because there are 10 prices given. All right, so the average, or the mean price for these 10 cameras is $664. So let's write that down. So the mean equals $664. All right, now let's read this again and see what it says exactly so we know exactly what we need to do. So a mountain climber wants to buy a new camera drone to help map out a safe route to the mountain's summit. Okay, the table shows the price of several camera drones. The climber is willing to pay the mean with an absolute deviation of at most $100. How many of the camera drone prices meet this condition? All right, so we can set up an absolute value inequality to represent this. And we know that at most means less than or equal to. So we can start with that. We know it's going to be at most. So it's going to be less than or equal to 100. So what's going to be at most that? Okay, so we know that the mean is $664, and we don't know what X is. So we can say, let X represent the price the climber is willing to pay. So if X is the price the climber is willing to pay, we can say X, and we can say minus the mean, $664. And we know that value is going to be less than or equal to the absolute deviation, which said he's willing to go $100, basically either way of the mean. So let's set this up and solve. So we're going to have X minus 664 less than or equal to 100. And we're going to have X minus 664 greater than or equal to negative 100. So add 664. All right, so X is less than or equal to 100 plus 664 will be 764. And if I add 664 here, I'm going to get X is greater than or equal to 564. All right. So if I know X has to be between 564 and 764, I get not wanting to pay more than a certain amount, but it seems a little funny that he don't want to pay less than a certain amount, but maybe drones less than a certain price just don't have the quality. They're not as good a quality. So maybe that's why there's a condition for a minimum and a maximum value. So we need all values. Let's write it up. Let's clean it up a little bit. So we're going to put 564 and 764. And again, we're bringing this one straight down. This one, we flipped it, so we've got to flip the inequality. And a good rule of thumb here is these, when they're written as a compound inequality like this, these signs should always be going the same direction. If they're not, you might want to check your work. You've probably done something wrong. So just FYI, something to keep in mind. All right, so which camera drone prices from this list will meet that requirement? So let's take a moment and see if we can try to make my line a little smaller here so I can circle these. All right, so the first number is 890. In between these two numbers, no. So that would not be one that you would choose. 650. 650 does fall in between 564 and 764. 660 also falls in between those. 450 is below that. So again, maybe the quality of this drone is not good enough for to map out a safe route to the mountain summit. So he wants something to make sure he's going to be completely safe when he's climbing whatever mountain he's climbing. All right, what about 725? 725 does fall in that range. 750 is just below 764, so that does fall in that range. 370, again, 370 is on the lower end, so that's probably not a good enough drone. 670 falls in the range that we're looking for. 650 falls in that range as well. And 825 is above that range, so maybe he just doesn't have that money or that much money to do that. So it says the climber is willing to pay a mean with an absolute deviation of at most $100. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 10 drone prices that fall within that range. So it says how many of the camera drone prices meet this condition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 would be your answer. 6 camera drones fall within that price range.